Hi guys, how are you all? Hope you're all doing well. So today I wanted to talk to you about my 10 top tips about moving overseas. Now I've done this a few times and just thought I'd give my recommendations and experiences to you guys. So as usual, I have a list here in front of me. So the first one is to make sure your phone is unlocked. So depending on what country you bought your phone in, so for me, when I first moved here, I was bringing my phone over with me, purchased in Australia, and sometimes they can come, when you purchase a phone, it can come unlocked. Sometimes it comes locked. So if you don't check that before you purchase the phone, you could unknowingly get a locked phone basically. And if you move overseas with that locked phone, I've never been in this situation myself, but I believe it can be really difficult and sometimes even impossible, meaning you'll have to buy a new phone to get that original phone unlocked. As you are, the phone will detect that you're in a different country, and I don't know the full understanding, like certain settings might not work the phone altogether. I think the phone altogether probably wouldn't work, to be honest. So that is right up there at the top. So this isn't really in any particular order. It's just an order that I wrote them in as I was thinking about it and just thinking about the experiences and things that I've gone through from going through this experience myself. So make sure your phone is unlocked. Next one, double check your visa requirements. Like some of them are really strict. Like, for example, my cousin's husband is Irish, and when he first moved to Australia, with his particular visa, I believe it was just like a standard working holiday visa, which for him was only 1 year. And I remember him telling me years later that he could only work for one company for 6 months, and then after that 6 months was over, he'd have to move on to another job, which I thought was a bit silly, but I don't understand why that was or why there was that special requirement. So that's one thing to consider. Like, if you have like an expiration date of when you need to leave a job by. Another one would be, can you work for more than one company at the same time? And also the hours. So sometimes there's like a really strict, they're really strict with the amount of hours that you can work for a certain company or just jobs in general. But I think a lot of that does come down to your type of visa, because every time I've moved overseas, I haven't had those requirements in any situation, luckily. But just definitely check that before you even apply for the visa, because visas to begin with can be very expensive. So you just want to make sure you're doing the right thing and not wasting anybody's time, including your own, plus your money, of course. Next one I have is make sure you've got an up-to-date passport. I renewed mine just before moving here, so I have many, many years on it, as I wanted to travel and see the side of the world while I was living here. So if you're anything like me and you're a traveler, like to see, explore new countries, new cultures, things like that, you will definitely want to have an up-to-date passport as once you have moved overseas, I believe. Once again, I haven't gone through this myself, but I believe it can be a really lengthy process, and having to send passports back and forth, and it could take months and months, I've heard, to get a new one or to get it updated or whatever the situation is. So make sure that you have an up-to-date passport before you leave, and obviously apply for it earlier rather than later, just so you'll receive the new passport in time before you leave the country. Next one I have is to make sure you have plenty of savings, so you don't get stuck and have to go straight into employment, settle down, find a job, start renting a place as soon as you move to the country. So on every occasion, I've made sure I've had plenty of savings. And then what I've been able to do is go to the country, kind of suss out possibly where I want to live, then just travel as much as I can, depending on time and, of course, money, before having to settle down. The next one I have is, I think this is common sense, to be honest, regardless of whether you're living overseas or just moving house, just to never rent a place without viewing it. I think for obvious reasons there, just so you don't get caught out and get caught in some big mess. The next one I have is to get like a multi-country adapter. So that way it can be used in several countries, regardless of whether you're traveling or you're using an old phone or laptop that you bought in your home country and taking that along with you to the new country, which is exactly what I did. So it wasn't until I bought a new phone that I got like a local adapter for that particular country with the phone when I made the purchase. I'm still using my laptop, it's still going strong from back home, so therefore I am having to use like a special adapter to be able to use it and charge it here in the UK. The next one I have is to pack light. I know that might be common sense again, or it might be a bit silly, but for me personally, every time I've done it, I've used like a bigger, I'd say larger size suitcase, just packed like the bare minimum necessities, you know, a couple of pairs of jeans, tank tops, dresses, skirts, which I love, t-shirts, socks, a couple of pairs of shoes. And if you're anything like me, you're gonna shop anyway, wherever you're moving to, and you know, you can always get your parents or friends to ship things from back home if really need be. Or what I did, for example, was I went back home to Australia a couple of years ago to visit family, and I basically went there with an empty suitcase because I've still got some things packed up at my parents' place. But then when I came back, I basically came back with a full suitcase of just some knits and jumpers and things, as it was winter here but summer back home. And I didn't really have any jumpers to get by here, or not enough through the winter. So I thought, well, instead of spending money here in the UK, I can just bring back with me what I have back home. So I did that. Next one is let your bank know that you're moving. So I notified them several times, and I'm sure majority of banks would do this these days, if not all banks. They're actually able to put a note on my file, just so if any activity was made on my card from overseas, which it was, especially when I first moved here, before I was working and was just sort of traveling, like random like transactions would come up from Ireland or Wales, or you know, obviously the UK, London. So instead of my card going on to like being put onto a freeze, thinking that some sort of fraud had been committed, they could see the notes on my account just saying that I've moved overseas and this card will continue to be used in whatever country you're in. The next one I have is get a card with no foreign transaction fees. So before I moved over here, I went to my local post office and I think I haven't used it for years, like since I moved here really. I think it was just called a currency card, and basically it's a debit card really. So basically a debit card minus the transaction fees, and you can upload, I think there's up to 10 different currencies you can upload onto the card, and I believe you can have more than one currency on the card at the same time. So I just uploaded whatever amount I wanted to in pounds before I moved here, and I basically used that. And you can upload it yourself online as much or as often as you need, but I remember paying some sort of a transaction like fee to upload money onto it, but it's much better to do it that way rather than spending your cash from back home, because number one, it's been converted into whatever currency of whatever country you're in, plus you get charged like a transaction fee on top of that, and for me it's just not worth it, because basically if I use Australian dollars in the UK, so going from Australian dollars to pounds, I'm wasting half of my money really. So I highly recommend getting what is called a currency card, I believe, back in Australia, but for other countries you could probably get something entirely different that wouldn't have the same name. And the last one I believe is really, really important. I recommend everybody to do this. So leave at least one copy of, you know, your forms of ID. So definitely like your passport, birth certificate, whether you take that with you or not. I think you should get copies anyway. Driver's license, whatever form of ID you have, make photocopies of them and leave them with honest and reliable people that you can rely on back home, just in case, you know, your passport gets stolen here or goes missing or anything happens. At least someone has a copy with the details of that documentation, just so you don't get stuck, you know, overseas and having no form of ID or what have you. It could just be really scary and terrifying, especially if you're in a country where your family is not, where, you know, they could obviously more easily help you out being in a different country. What am I trying to say? So basically, yeah, leave a copy of all ID, passport, birth certificate, driver's license, like ID card, age ID card, with someone really reliable back home, just so you don't get into a mess, just in case you do, like if it gets stolen or you lose it. That way it's easy for you to identify yourself and get the information that you need from that documentation. So they are my top 10 tips of things to consider before moving overseas. I hope this has been really helpful to you guys. If you know of anyone that's considering moving overseas, if not yourself, please pass this on. As when I was sitting down and thinking about this, a few of these things really didn't come to mind for quite some time. So I think some of them are quite straightforward and people would be like, yeah, okay, yeah, need to consider this, double check this and this. But I think some of them are a little bit more, not obscure, but I think wouldn't pop into people's minds at first. So yeah, pass this on to others that could use it. And please remember to like or subscribe down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.